Sponsor.
Good evening, welcome to another episode on Silent Majority. Today's episode is reprehensible, that's the best word for it actually. And the title of this episode is Pakistani grooming, in brackets, rape gangs, particularly across the north. Now, I felt and we felt as a team that we needed to address this because all of the media outlets that are touching on this topic are quite obviously English presenters and journalists, and it's no one that represents us within the South Asian Muslim community that's actually addressing this issue. I actually was watching a clip on YouTube from GB News, and they're all over this like a rash. And they had this Sikh representative on. He's a political analyst, something Bagal or something, and he was quite readily upfront about saying that, you know, this is a Pakistani problem, it's not a South Asian problem, you know, it doesn't affect this, that and the other. And I'm just thinking, you know, fair enough, you know, you're a token and you went out there and you said what you needed to say and you represent your community, and I respect that. But, you know, if this is a problem, if this is a deep-rooted problem within the Pakistani community, particularly up north, then it should be us that need to address it and really understand and establish what the problems are. I have with me here today, mashallah, an esteemed guest of British Pakistani heritage. He's an imam, a qualified imam, brother Usman. Osama, forgive me.
That's okay.
Brother Osama. So he's a speaker and he's a qualified imam, and I think that makes him certainly qualified to talk on the matter. Before we do start, I'd like to thank my main sponsor, Ahyaan Estate. If you are a landlord or a tenant and you're looking for a property, please do reach out to them. They're loyal, they give you the best prices, and they're very, very competitive. If you're having any marital issues, reach out to Simplex Coaching. Now, without further ado, you know, this has resurfaced and quite recently. And fortunately, I'm from the southeast and you're from Luton, right? So I'm not sure if you consider that southeast. We from the southeast consider that up north. But nevertheless, it's not up north, it's primarily southeast. But this plague and this endemic, so to speak, is primarily up north. And we've got very famous and notable cases. And there's so many that I'll list the most prominent ones. You've got Rotherham, you've got Rochdale, you've got Derby, Blackburn. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. And it's notably, primarily, Pakistani men of British and non-British nationality in gangs doing heinous crimes to primarily, the ones that are being covered actually are primarily young white girls. So understandably, this country's in arms, because it's all good and well. We can always say, oh, it's a racist card, and we all discuss the racism element to it. But let's flip the script. If it was white men or African men or any other race that was doing it to South Asian, Bangladeshi or Pakistani young girls, you would be also equally up in arms. And if you look at our sort of home countries, there'd be riots and protests and carnage. So in that regards, they've been civil about it. However, the topics that we'll discuss today is about the statistics and how skewed they are or biased they are. Really find out what the bigger picture is. Sure. And I want to start with that. So I've spoken. I've given you an introduction.
Sure.
Let's talk about statistics first.
So if I can just, begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu al-atamani al-akmalani ala shafi'i al-ummati Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa tabi'in. May all praise be and we belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, the Most High, and His ultimate peace and salutations be praised upon the most blessed and noble creation to blessed and graced earth, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Amen.
So, brother, firstly, assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair for having me on and hosting me. Jazakallah khair. Now, regarding statistics, there's something I want to refer to. Just as a code Islam uses, which is actually mentioned in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, O you who believe, إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا. if somebody who commits transgression comes forward to you with a piece of news, you must verify that news. So the key code from this ayah is, whenever somebody comes to you with a piece of news, you have to verify it. It's very easy to get involved in the emotions. It's very easy to get involved in the jargon, watching news shows and watching podcasts which are heavily pumped with fuel and emotion and jargon. Put all of that to a side now. Let's now use this universal code Allah has given us in the Quran, and let's apply this and look at the statistics here. So just before I came from last night to this morning, I was actually looking at this situation that, look, is it truly a thing that where Pakistani men have some, fantasy about preying on young white girls, basically? And when I looked at this, the first thing I saw from a statistics perspective is the perpetrators in this crime, rapes, grooming gangs, etc., 83%, and the source for this was BBC News, by the way, 83% are middle-aged white men. And then I think like 8-9% were Asian, and then the rest of the percentage were mixed race and the Afro-Caribbean community. So that firstly shows you a large chunk of people when it comes to this crime are the middle-aged white men from this country, and then the rest of the potentials are the other ethnic minorities. Then I thought, okay, the second piece of news I need to verify is it just the Pakistani men that are preying on just the white women? Yeah? Girls, right. So I looked at this, and in the Spectator News, this was actually written, I think, on 10th of January. It said in there that the Center for Women's Justice, CWJ, said, if I can quote, can I quote it?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
It says here that the CWJ made detailed submissions to ensure that the voices of victims and survivors were heard, including those who are black and of minority ethnic origin, whose experiences have been obliterated by a narrative that portrays grooming gangs as exclusively Pakistani men abusing white girls. Right? This was mentioned in the Spectator, 10th of January. And also, we know that there are cases of Sikh girls being groomed too. So this isn't, when you now apply this code that Allah gives you in the Quran, you found that the majority of the perpetrators are white middle-aged men, and it's not exclusive to young white girls. There are many girls from all different backgrounds that are being groomed. Now, when it comes to the grooming issue, of course, this is something that Islam doesn't condone. It condemns it. That's very clear. It's not something that Islam pushes. Islam doesn't push this. In fact, Islam's, you look at Islam's penal code on those who transgress towards women, they're actually very harsh. Very harsh. Lashing, penalties. So Islam has a very harsh penalty for those who transgress Allah's laws when it comes to transgressing women and taking their honor. So that's from a statistics perspective.
I think that was very succinct. And you've mentioned BBC, The Spectator, and if I can just add to it, the Home Office did a study in 2002, and they said there wasn't any substantial evidence to link ethnic minorities primarily to this epidemic or endemic. So I'm glad you've incorporated Islam, because Islam is something that's within our fabric, and we live under the auspices of Islam. So alhamdulillah, there's so many things to unravel. So statistics wise, I'm glad we started with that. So statistically, just to reiterate, 85%, 83,
yeah,
to be precise.
Yeah, 83. Yeah.
I like that. Respect it. Man of integrity, 83. So 83% of middle-aged white men, whatever men they are, regardless of their color and their ethnic background, these are disgusting men. Yes. That's a fact, and I think across society, everyone would agree on that. So 83% of white men do it, yet the media is obstinately focused, not just, and they've sort of narrowed it down. It went from Muslims to South Asians to, we found a country, a home country here, Pakistani men. Now, if we go, it's not even a notion, if we go on the fact that 83% are white men, Why is it, and why do you think, and this is me playing devil's advocate, why do you think that the media are so focused, obstinately focused on just labeling the Pakistani community here?
So there's actually so much to unpack here. There's so much to unpack here. And I think this is where the juicy part of this episode and podcast is going to take place now. So, just to begin with, we live in a world, by where, or let's just make it limited to Britain.
Yeah.
We live in a country where the ruling class, the government, do not take accountability for their mistakes. I'll just give you one small example. COVID was a very tough time for all of us. A lot of us lost family members, people we knew. Sometimes we couldn't even go and, say goodbye to them because of the restriction that were put in place. And we also know at the same time that the ruling class, Boris Johnson at the time, he was having wine, cheese, cracker parties. But this was during a time where you had the social distance laws being implemented. But then people who couldn't say goodbye to their family members who are on their deathbed weren't allowed to do that. So it's very clear here by that there's one rule for the elite, the ruling class, the government, and then there's one rule for the masses. And this is inshallah something that I actually want to explore in this podcast more, that instead of looking at races and ethnic minorities and Afro-Caribbeans, Pakistanis, Asian, white, one thing that the world actually needs to realize is there's the elite and then there's the masses. We're all on the same boat. We're all on the same boat. But to answer your question specifically about why have they focused on this, it's simple. When you do not want to take accountability for your own failure and for your own mistakes, just point the finger at someone else. When it was Brexit, who was it? It wasn't the Pakistanis. It was the Europeans.
It's true.
When it comes to the Tottenham riots and the looting that took place, it wasn't the Pakistanis, it was the Afro-Caribbeans.
Yeah.
Now, when it came to jobs, it was the Asians. So you can see here very clearly, that whenever there's a failure, there's a gap, there's a hole in the system, there's always an ethnic minority that has to pay the price for it. Now, grooming gangs, it lands on the Pakistani table.
Beautifully put. If I am being critical and fair and balanced, if you look at the images that come across or are plastered across BBC and all across social media, and these grooming gangs, particularly if you look at the most famous ones, Rochdale, Rotherham, and so on and so forth, it is overwhelmingly, I think they could be Pakistani or Bengali. They could be either of those, but I think they're Pakistani. If there's a gang of 15, and when you see 15 South Asian Muslim faces, it becomes more than an isolated incident. It becomes a concerted, this is an organized crime sort of thing where we're going to prey on our prey. So I can see why the masses of this country, not the ethnic minorities, the white English, would be up in arms, because they've, whether the media has an agenda or not, the fact is 15, 16, 17, 50 Pakistani men or South Asian men have perpetrated vile acts on the vulnerable. So if you're even living, so if we live in the South, right? So from the South, an Englishman or an Englishwoman from the South, or anyone really, looks at a crime as deplorable as one that's been committed across the North. As you and I would think, oh, it's disgusting anyway. But when you see a homogeneous face, so brown, tanned faces, automatically the brain makes patterns here. Well, this is concerted. This has been, this has been organized. So we have to call out that, yes, there are Pakistani men up north that are organized and they do this, their sick culture that they may have. So yes, even though in spite of the statistics overwhelmingly leaning towards 83%, beg your pardon, of white middle-aged men that do this, it still is a considerable amount of, I think one is too many, right? One is too many. One of these heinous crimes is too many. So my next question to you is, if this is a sub-rooted problem, where do you think it stems from? And again, we can isolate in different parts. So if you look at the South, I've never heard of any Pakistanis doing that. Is it a northern problem? Firstly, secondly, has it been transported from back home? So whether I've read in an article, and I think it was by a Pakistani journalist, that most of the Pakistanis are from Mirpur, Kashmir, and so on and so forth. She was, safe to say, she was a feminist, but she did say that what these Pakistani men have done, and these perpetrators, they adopt the idea or the ideology of not misogynism combined with chauvinism, and they feel like they can get away with it, and they see women as subservient to them. Is that something? So essentially, what I'm saying, in less fanciful terms, is was that culture transported over from Pakistan to here by those that have come here? That's number one. Secondly, I can clearly say in the south, no, none of us do this. It's unheard of. It's absurd. But in the north, it's rampant. So they're the two things.
Okay, no, great. So to unpack this one again, to look at this from a bird's eye perspective, when the first batch of economic migrants came here, I'm not sure if it was the 50s or 60s, right?
Yeah.
If that was the case, my grandfather, your grandfather, would have been heavily involved in that.
It's true.
Yeah?
Yeah.
If they did bring this culture, it would have been them that started it off. It was only probably 20, 30, 40 years later, in the 2000s, if you want to say the late 1990s, where this started to happen. And it became noticeable. So the first point I want to make is, no, it wasn't a culture that was imported from Pakistan. There was something that over the years and generations went by, perhaps certain values of the country we live in pushed these people to do so. And what is my argument by tomorrow? It's quite an extreme kind of suggestion, but for argument's sake, tomorrow morning, there's a law that all Pakistanis, all Kashmiris are put on the boat and they're sent back to Pakistan. They will never return to the United Kingdom ever again. Just want to ask you a question now, Bai. Do you think the issue of grooming gangs will be resolved? If all the Pakistanis and Mirpuris go home, that's it. We'll take our chicken tikka masala with us. The UK won't have their, lovely tasty curry on a Friday evening. We're gone.
Yeah.
Would the issue of a sexualized society and grooming gangs and rapes and sexual harassment, because it falls under one umbrella,
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
Would this issue disappear and evaporate?
You don't really need me to answer that question. I think the view is me, everyone knows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so now is the issue now exclusive to just Pakistanis?
I don't think it is. I think you made a compelling argument there.
Did you see?
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is, and now to further push this in I think the 1980s or 1990s, I just have, again, from this morning when I was looking into this, was it the Pakistanis, that educated Jimmy Savile on what he was doing to the children? You see, was it the Pakistanis that gave Hugh Edwards the camera to take pictures of indecent children? Was it the Pakistanis who educated Patrick Rock, who was the former director of policy under David Cameron, who was caught with indecent, again, pictures of children? Was it the Pakistanis that kind of smuggled those images to him? And then you look at the royal family, Prince Andrew. Was it the Pakistanis that gave him a PIA plane to go to America and do what he did on Jeffrey Epstein's island? Do you see what I'm trying to say here by that? All of this and this is what I want to say, the irony is we're talking about grooming gangs, but we are the ones that are being groomed up here.
Wow.
We are the ones that are being groomed in our minds, our perceptions, our view, our narrative is all being skewed and designed by the political establishment, the British government. Why? They don't want to take accountability for their failure. In fact, let me put it this way, another argument, if I may, separate to this point. Why has it become so easy for men, Pakistani, white, Afro-Caribbean, mixed race, why has it become easy for men to prey on young girls? Why? If you look at Qatar as an example, let's go back to the World Cup that they hosted. Yes, we understand very well that it's not a Islamic government in its independent way. But if you look at just the social code and how men behave towards women, it was the first World Cup where no fighting took place whatsoever. Why? It's because You had different races thereby. Everyone came from all over the world. It was the World Cup.
Absolutely, yeah.
It was the World Cup.
Yeah.
But what is it that kept that social fabric intact? It was the values of the country and the place.
And the deterrent.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly.
But you're right, more so the values.
You see, because they see already that, hold on, there's an unwritten code that you can't do certain things with women here. If you do, there are going to be serious repercussions. They didn't cross that line. And it was the first World Cup since the beginning of World Cups where there hasn't been any fights. Alcohol was obviously banned and stuff.
Yeah.
So people wouldn't act in a drunkard way. But do you see what I'm saying? The argument is it's the value of a place which shapes the behavior.
Beautifully put. I think I'm going to tell you now, we're going to definitely do a discussion with yourself and other remarkable people of the sociology, and we're going to compare and contrast the values of each society and its merits and its pros and cons. Just quickly, I think Kemi, however you pronounce her name, Badenoch, I think ethnically she's Nigerian and she's through and through British. She's come out and she's also labelled, she's spoken hugely on this issue. Elon Musk has. Prior to that, her predecessor, what's that lady's name? The Indian looking lady, the then Home Secretary, prior to Kemi Badenoch. What's her name? I can't believe I've got her name now. Suella.
Yeah.
Suella. So Suella's come out and she's weighed in as well. And you can see the picture I'm trying to build here, right?
That's right.
So I acknowledge that, and the points and the arguments you've made are very valid. And I'm just going to reiterate it. If you were to export all of the South Asians, precisely the Pakistanis,
We'll take our curry with us.
carry everything, right? Will there still be an endemic in this country where there's paedophiles, nonces, whichever way we want to put it, grooming young girls and raping young girls?
So imagine UK with no chaiwala, bhai.
Yeah.
Tough time, right?
Yeah, well, I guess so. Yeah, for some, yeah, I guess. That's a point. But I do want to focus on, because I think you set the scene, alhamdulillah, by mentioning Allah's name and mentioning the penal codes that we adhere to. And particularly in Islam, the relation between the genders that we have, and this strict relations between the genders, it's respectful, it's honorable. To the extent that, if you see a Muslim woman, and if this is for non-Muslim viewers, if you see a Muslim woman semi-clad walking down the street, to some degree there'll be eyebrows raised in Muslim communities. So generally speaking, women from our community are covered up.
Sure.
And I'm not alluding to anything here because we're going to have a separate episode about this and we're going to compare Qatar to this country. But I do think, even though it's not a seismic problem in comparison to the evil white counterparts that these Pakistani evil men have, these nonces, right? But I do think there should be an onus on the northern communities, the leaders of those communities, the uncles of those communities, the young adults of those communities, to scrutinize and punish. And I'm not saying, become a vigilante and break their legs and chop them up. I'm not saying that, but there should be a system within a place, some sort of community cohesion where those men that are perpetrating, they need to be punished.
Sure.
Because we can't just all turn around and say, oh, look at these white people, they're being racist and they're targeting. Because I'm more than happy to say it. Most of the white people in this country are liberal, and they, because of history and because of the racism and the colonization and so on and so forth, they not only think once, twice, third, fourth time, particularly the middle class, of not being racist. They're very careful and they tread carefully, but that doesn't mean that we just think it's a racist accusation here. There is a problem, and there are Pakistani men up north that are doing these things. So what would your advice be to the Pakistani communities up north, and not just exclusive Pakistani, the Bengali, any Muslim community up north, in how to not punish? We actually punish is the word. How do you punish and discipline these perpetrators? Because prison sentences are very lenient. I looked at, when I was watching the sentences these monsters got, 3, 4, 5 years. You get more for homophobia, anti-Semitism, right? I'm not saying that they're equally less crimes,
Sure.
but I'm just saying, you know, you're raping and you're
Sentences fit the crime.
make it, equal to the crime.
What I'd say on that, Bai, is, so look, we could give a short-term solution.
Yeah.
I just also want to make this clear because it's very important to build a full picture here. Within our communities, of course, we can educate the masses, the Muslim masses, on, what it means. We have something in Islam called the honor of women. Lowering your gaze, understanding that women are actually your trust, your amana. You are, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الرجال قوامون على النساء, that men are the guardians of women. So when you have this elevated, lofty view towards women, you will not see them as carnal objects. Do you see? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of a short-term. That's a short-term solution. But I'm just going to be completely honest with you here, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure, like, it's unscripted. I can say what I like.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
All of these teachings that Islam puts forward can only take root in the correct way when the whole of the civilization is based upon Islam. Otherwise, I'll give you an example, yeah?
Yeah.
One weakness for men is obviously women. That's known. Islam says that, right?
Unless you're homosexual.
Oh, yeah, of course. That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you have that viewpoint as a Muslim now, but then society outside, look at the same issue what we discussed about Qatar.
Yeah.
Women wouldn't dress in a certain way.
Yeah.
They can be quite alluring. Men can also be quite weak. So you've got this belief in your heart, but because it's not now transcending on a societal level, it's just loggerheads all the time. Your internal desire and then your belief are at loggerheads. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He speaks about all of these values in the Quran, they came to take root in an actual land, in a civilization, in a way of life. It wasn't for example, Wali Bai or Osama to come and believe this and then be thrown into the belly of the beast. No, that's not how insan was made to function. So in response to your question, Bais, yes, from our perspective, community leaders, imams, scholars, clerics, we should educate the masses on how we should be treating women. But will that last long when you have the society that you have today? People are sexualized, pornography. I'll give you another example. I think it was a week ago on one of the group chats we're on. My brother posted a link where it said a woman was happy that she slept with 1,000 men.
Yeah, I've seen that
in 24 hours.
SubhanAllah, yeah.
Like I was that I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to write, what to respond. But then, do you see what I'm trying to say? There's a value that gives, because that woman is not one woman in isolation. How many women, look at OnlyFans now, feel liberated when they're selling themselves? So do you see, you have a whole kind of value system which gives rise to these actions and these platforms. And on the one side, you got saying, brother, lower your gaze, women, your honor. Only a few people cling to it, really. Do you see? Because people are a product of a society and system and values. So I'm saying to go the long way around, and to kind of give the comprehensive answer, you will not be able to fix this problem unless the value system of the country changed. That's just me being frank and honest. We can discuss it.
So I'm there's many points that you've made that I'm in agreement with, and in theory I'm in agreement with. However, we don't live in a Muslim country.
We don't. That's
Even
right.
the Muslim countries are not Muslim countries anymore.
We don't.
So we live in the West, which is secular, and unfortunately, if we look at it from a pragmatic perspective, right? And this is a northern problem. It's not a southern problem. So these.
Are you sure there's no incidents at all that's taken place in
there
the South?
there may be, but nothing that I've come across. So if I've scoured through all the incidents, they're all up north, Derby, Blackburn.
What about when teachers groom children in schools? I'm sure there were incidents of that taking place in the South.
And were they a South Asian thing or Pakistani? Or
No, they weren't South
So
Asian.
they were. So I'm talking particularly about
Pakistanis.
Pakistani, South Asian, that cluster of people, right? And I think we're quite tight-knit, strong communities. We behave with honor, and Islam advocates this. If I see you doing wrong, not only will I admonish you for it, whether it be polite or not, I'd admonish you and say, you don't do this because not only are you sinning, but you're representing us in
Sure.
a bad way, in a bad light to other peoples. So my question to you again, and I appreciate the theory, and there's so many things that you mentioned that I will evolve into other episodes that are
course.
already in you,
Of
in
course I
train,
will.
sorry, rather. What sort of punishment, from a community perspective, needs to be given to these men, these evil men that have done what they've done? They've served their sentence. They've served their sentence. They've come out again. And to be fair, 3, 4, 5 years isn't a sentence. You know, they live in comfy beds and play PlayStation and whatever it is they may be, but it's not a deterrent. If it was in another country, they would get chopped up.
Mm-hmm.
That's the long and short of it. So how can the community, in a non-violent way, punish these perpetrators? Ostracizing them, shaming shaming their families?
But here's the thing, it will always come back to a discussion of penal code. Because look, we live in a first world country,
Right.
Britain,
Yep.
took over half the world, civilized, technology,
I'd
advancement.
argue, you know, they weren't civil when they went around the world.
Oh yes, I'm saying they class themselves as civilized
Yes,
people,
and
yeah?
I'd say they are civilized to some degree. Yep.
So I'm saying now, and this is a wicked discussion actually,
Yep.
if you have to take justice in your own hands
Yep.
because the penal code isn't strong enough of a deterrent, what does that tell you?
The justice system doesn't work.
Okay, exactly. So if the justice system doesn't work,
Yeah.
how can we as civilians
Yeah.
who have put our trust into this system,
Yep.
we pay our taxes,
Yep.
we contribute to the country.
Yep.
In fact, Pakistanis, South Asians, ethnic minorities after World War took place,
Yeah.
we restored this country again.
We did, yeah.
We're giving our trust to this system.
Yep.
It's failing us. It's failing us. So I'm saying in an ultimate way,
Yep.
for a people to put justice in their own hands
Yeah.
is a reflection that there is no justice can truly be served. So I'm thinking, what I'm trying to say by is this, yeah, to make it clear for the audience,
Yeah.
that we are all on one boat, regardless of religion, color,
Yeah.
language, background,
Yeah.
religious leaning, even, who you prefer in terms of gender, whatever, right? I'm saying we're all on one boat. Why? Because we are just commodities for the political ruling elite, the government, the establishment. They are the ones who are living and controlling life. They have got a huge amount of capital. That's why they lead for. If again, something I want to touch upon later is that when you look at Islam's model of governance, our rulers for the first 10 generations were poor people. Even on the way here, I was listening to lectures of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh, that he only had 2 pieces of clothing that he would substitute throughout a season. And one time when he was giving a sermon, somebody saw him to have another garment and they interrupted the khutbah, the Friday sermon. Why do you have another piece of clothing? And he said, his son intervened and said, no, it's not his. I gave him mine because his one was ruined. Now look at politics today. The politicians today are the multi-millionaires. Multi-millionaires. So has politics in the Western world, let's now make it exclusive to Britain, is politics a career here or is it responsibility? So what I'm trying to say is the world now, all of us from all backgrounds and religions and colors and faiths, need to start discussing bigger issues, i.e. looking for an alternate way of life to live under, which gives prosperity for all. And I'm making the claim, it's a strong claim, and maybe we can have other discussions for this, inshallah, that Islam, not as a religion, people don't need to become Muslim to have rights. Islam is a clear representation of that. It didn't force La ilaha illallah down people's throats. It didn't force the testimony of Islam's faith down people's throats, but it promised justice, prosperity, economic fairness, and ensured that if people did transgress, there's harsh deterrence for it. So I think now we've come to a point in the world today, even in Britain, where people as the masses and as the historical higher class would class us as peasants, we need to start looking for alternate way of life, because it's failing everywhere. Economic perspective,
Yeah.
justice. It's very hard. People now are going for universities, getting 50, 60,000 pound debt they can't find a job.
No, they can't. There's a different different conversation.
I know I said a
You
lot there.
No, you did.
I know I said a lot
You
there,
know, it's
right?
borderline sort of Marxist, bourgeoisie and proletariat.
But I'm just trying to make a point here that, look, if we're going to do things short term, tomorrow it will be the Afro-Caribbeans blamed again. Then how are they going to look after their farm? What are they going to do? Bring out a whip? And then tomorrow, the day after, is going to be the Polish. What's going to happen with them? You see? And then again, it will be the... So do you see how there'll be a cycle again and again of how each ethnic minority are saying we need to punish our own people? But why? We live under a system.
I fully get your point and I fully get your holistic answer. But forgive me for my petulance. I'm going to reword the question. Now I'm fully with the fact that we live in a democratic society and it's a justice system that should be dishing out the punishment. And one argument from this conversation, if anyone cares to listen, anyone in authority, is introduce more punitive punishments, longer prison sentences, etc., etc. I think deportation, and this is another thing, and this is what I don't like, right? The racist undertone to it. The moment a coloured man, a tanned man, an African man, and these are heinous people that do commit these crimes, but the first thing that comes up first, let's deport him. And if the audience are definitely wary of my stance on this, and how it's when you are a citizen of this country. I did an episode with a brother last week. And he was offered to be deported. You know, you'll be stripped of your citizenship. He was alleged on terrorist crimes.
Okay.
25 to 30 years. That's what MI5, MI6 proposes to him. You know, before you get tried of whether you're innocent or guilty, give up your British citizenship. We'll send you to Bangladesh. No prison sentence, but we're going to take your citizenship. So why is it, overwhelming question here is, why is it that when a coloured man is in the crosshairs of committing a crime, be it, obviously this is a severe crime, but generally that deportation is always on the card, or is even referenced. You know, I was watching GB News, not that I do watch them, but it's like, deportation, where they come from, send them back. Would you send him back to, if he was born here, where'd you send him back to?
Yeah, that's right.
Where do you send him to?
Exactly.
The ship shop.
Yeah, that's right.
But, sorry, I just get a bit infuriated. But the question I do want to ask you again, I fully get the justice system and I fully get it's their responsibility. But you and I were from similar communities, right? We have strong communities and we have proud and honourable communities. And if there's one in our community that does wrong, be it drug dealers and it's an endemic, or thief, or anything. I'll just give you an example, actually. Drug dealers in our community, I can only talk about our communities here, right? As a kid growing up, generally speaking, a drug dealer would be seen as a cool person. So if you're in your middle teenage years and you look at an early 20-year-old selling drugs, he's got his R32. Yeah, that was the car, right? Our Golf GTI. And he's got his, I don't know, Z & Co clothes on, particularly in East London. I'm not sure what it is in Luton. He was aspired to and looked up to. But very quickly, the moment he got to 25, 26, 27, and he's still selling drugs, within our communities, it's a taboo. He's looked down on. He might still sell drugs, but he won't be proud of it. He won't be, in the community, he won't be celebrated as a businessman or a respectable person. And even the drug dealer will know that it's a means to an end. Does that make sense? He wouldn't be out there, you know, as other communities they rap about and stuff like that. That doesn't exist in our community, does it? That same drug dealer that's making a killing on drugs, if he gets to 30, 35 still selling drugs, it'd be very low, hush, hush. Because it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment to his family. The community will definitely not approve of it. And to some degree, you know, unless he's a friend of mine is a drug dealer, if I hear a drug dealer and he's going to come and sit on my table, I'm like, you're a drug dealer. I can't be associated with you. If he's a friend, I'll give him an exception because I've known him for a long time. But if he's not a friend and he's a drug dealer, I can't associate. That's disrespectful to me. And what are people going to think of me? So they're the communities we come from.
Sure.
Right? That's, you know, I've made a long-winded comment just to drive this point again. So I ask you the question again. What sort of punishment? I get the justice system. I get the penal code. I get the contradictions between Islamic way of life and the West and secularism. I get the pornography out there. I get the over-sexualization. I get all of that. But from a northern Pakistani community perspective, what can they do to these culprits to show them that you may be from us, but we condemn you, and this is a punishment.
So here's the thing, Bai. Because I don't know, part of me, I just like to be precise.
Yeah.
I don't like to gloss over things.
Sure.
And this is not me responding to your question with a question, but how would you, like, what would you deem fit as a condemnation against these people?
So I'm from East London, and Tam, let's to be precise, and we've got a strong Bengali community here, alhamdulillah, and we're doing good. You know, we're representing across the UK. We are, you know, and one of our famous institutes, the East London Mosque.
Oh, yes.
Across is renowned, alhamdulillah. So if that happened within my community, I'm confident that there's people in Stepney Green, in Bow, in Brick Lane, even more specifically Cannon Street, and across East London, even if you go to Walthamstow, which is primarily Pakistani, so East London, there'll be people within those areas, whether it's community leaders or just a community, some sort of forum, that will either ostracize them, you know, there'll be the odd swearing and the disgust, but they will definitely be ostracized. And they will definitely, if they've been associated, if I was associated with a nonce, I will not be associated with a nonce anymore. That's the first thing. Secondly, I will dig even further. I'll look into his family. I'll go and question the family. Did you know that your so-and-so was doing this? And if you did know, we have a problem now.
For argument's sake, Bai,
Yeah.
let's just say, yeah, we did know he had this issue.
Yeah.
We couldn't stop him.
Yeah.
What happens then?
Then obviously I can't say on camera, right? Then I can't. But yes, you're right.
Do you know, Bai, sorry, I interrupted.
No. I think you're going to make a valid point. I'll make my point after.
What my point basically is okay, after you've condemned them,
Yeah.
after you've ostracized them, after you've done things that you can't say on camera to them,
Yeah,
you've done all of that, would that still fix the problem?
it wouldn't, no.
So this is what I'm trying to say.
I fully get that, but there
That-
needs to be a plaster. Just a quick fix. Then I'm saying I get the holistic approach. I get the system that we live in.
If you're gonna, sorry, I interrupted. Go for it.
Sorry, forgive me. You know, I commend your mannerisms, and it comes from as a quality, mashallah. So if I get a quick fix isn't going to solve the problem. This is an endemic,
Sure.
and it's not an endemic particularly pertaining to the Pakistani.
Of course.
If it's an endemic, it's a white man endemic,
course,
right? It's
that's
not right. And obviously, that I think there's multiple factors from, I don't know, they may have been sexually abused growing up, and all the other factors. And you need academics to write theses on this, and maybe we can. Who knows? Inshallah, we can do our research.
Sure,
Inshallah,
sure.
why not? We can write a thesis on this. But there's so many moving fixtures that contribute to one's mindset, and I think porn plays a significant part in
Sure.
it. Also, having a sordid mindset. But what does a quick fix do? What does a plaster do? If, for argument's sake, and I'll use another analogy, I'm very much enjoying this conversation. Your son, for instance, if you had a son, your son was rude, right? And he was rude in front of your friends. You give him a quick slap. Just there and then. Which is a quick fix. He may not know what he's done is wrong in a wider sense, but he knows it's wrong. And he may never forget that slap. He may take that to his grave when you and I are long gone. At 70 years old, grey haired, my dad once slapped me because I was rude. And since then,
Remember that.
I remember that. So quick fixes, they have two outcomes. One, it affects the person that's been done on. And secondly, it placates those that are watching.
True. Okay, but what if my son
Yeah.
is rude to others in my absence?
So that needs long-term institutionalized education.
Sure, that's right.
The system needs to change. And I get that. The system is flawed.
That's right.
The system is flawed.
So
But
I'm sorry, Bai, again.
no, please.
What I'm trying to get at, Bai, is I don't want to kind of come across as someone who is just pessimistic and things won't change. I'm trying to be a realist, Bai. Look, and this is where I kind of want to introduce Palestine, if
Sure,
you allow
please,
me to.
please,
Yeah?
yes.
It's not the first time that a genocide has taken place on Palestine. There's been other countries, 2003, the Iraq War. Then there was Bosnia before that. How many decades, how many years are we keep going to be giving life and oxygen to the same dying system that is killing us? On all fronts, on a foreign level, on a domestic level, on a regional level. This is why I'm making a strong argument. People need to leave the forest, come back, take a good bird's eye view perspective on what life should be like, and then look towards that. Because look, bhai, that's fine. I could say, put these guys into a room and beat them all up. Yeah? Looking at how the world is now, wallahi, it's very saddening. I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 to 10 years' time, and this pains me, bhai, wallahi, it pains me, to see women from Islam, Muslim women, that are going to be on OnlyFans themselves. Right now, it's, non-Muslim women.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
We
It would kill me.
We do catch up.
It would kill me. So it's going there to show by it's a culture and it's a value thing. So how are you gonna control that if astaghfirullah, one of our daughters goes and decides to do that one day?
Yeah, I'd rather die.
But I would ask Allah for the ground to swallow me.
Yes, that's it.
Do you see? So I'm just trying to make a claim by that. Yes, you could put all these guys in a room, give them what you want to give them, what you can't see on camera, isolate them from society, but they are living in a world where that will still be available to them if they want to do it. They'll leave. Okay, fine. They'll leave north. They'll go to Scotland.
Yeah.
They'll go to Coventry. They'll come down to Luton. They'll come to East London. They can still do what they want to do.
They can.
And here's another point, Bhai. I'm just trying to add different perspective to this issue to make it multi-dimensional.
Yeah.
These girls that are groomed, they're often bought with gifts, money, flashy cars. A guy's come along and he's, he's like the Al Pacino of his kind of area, and the woman kind of the girl, is impressed by that. Why is it that people from as young as children to adults have the idea of materialism and money as a point of success in their mind? It's because we live in a world that is heavily geared towards capital materialism. Do you see? So what I'm trying to say is even this is how school teachers groom children. A Gucci belt, pair of trainers, PlayStation, whatever. They are bought. They're bought by. We live in a world where people can be bought. And that the metric of impressing someone is so low that, subhanAllah, you can commit certain acts with them because you drive a fancy car. And even, for example, myself, I don't have a sister. But if somebody come to ask for my sister's hand in marriage, I do not care, even if you drove a Bugatti. I do not care if your house is a 7-bed detached house and your tiles have come from Italy in your front room. I don't care. Are you going to be someone that is going to cultivate a upright family and provide value to your community and society? That's all I care about. So the point about children and stuff and them being bored is even the metric of how people are impressed. It's the same from adults all the way to children. And this is what happens when you live in a world which just focuses on economy, money, and materialism.
Capitalism, interest, and there's a few things that I want to discuss with you offline about what we're going to do in terms of addressing these issues. But I think the holistic overview of capitalism, the West, and to be fair, in order to change, I admire the revolutionary mindsets. And that's how one should be. A Muslim should be like that to better humanity.
Of course.
But I'm quite a realist as well. I like to dream, and I can humour you to some extent. But I think World War III needs to happen in order for this. It does. There is no other way. World War III needs to happen where technology ceases to exist in order to be a reset. You know how World War II was a reset and superpowers lost power and other superpowers came in? That needs to happen. But putting that to aside, I think if I caught on to a fringe of what you just said about these girls being wooed and being susceptible to gifts, material gifts and commodity. And, these men are preying on them like commodities with their nice cars and stuff like that. But I would argue, and again, I think research will show this, and forget academics doing research, just through lived experience, empirical experience here, girls, unfortunately, that are vulnerable to that are usually not from strong households. There is a vulnerability there, whether it's the father is absent, or the mother, a single parent household, or there's some sort of other illnesses there, whether it's drug related, alcohol related, domestic abuse and stuff like that.
That's right.
And unfortunately, these animals prey on those particular girls. You couldn't go and tell these Pakistani men or these white men couldn't go and tell any girl, regardless of what race she's from, here's £1,000. Wouldn't a predator like that wouldn't be able to give my sister £1,000 and say all this and the other because she's had a good upbringing and she knows one phone call and it's on, right? It wouldn't be. But there's girls, unfortunately, and it's not their fault. They've been born into that life. That are vulnerable, that are praised, and what I'm trying to say, to put it simply, is that social services also, more of a pragmatic lens, they need to pay much more attention to these families and identify who could be susceptible to this. Because sometimes, as you said, these perpetrators, and I'm talking about all men here, not Pakistanis that do this stuff, they can change location and have a new identity, right? But I think the onus is also important. Prevention is also a cure, right? So
Yes.
if social services identify, if there's a 13-year-old kid, particularly in our culture, yeah, because our culture's been targeted here, right? I've never seen a 13-year-old South Asian Muslim girl come out, I mean, there are exceptions, right? But they're not going to come out. What's the best way to put this? We are on camera, right? I've never seen a 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old. To be fair, things are changing now. But eyebrows will be raised if a 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old was to come out and they're in street corners smoking or chilling with a group of boys. It doesn't happen in our communities, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if that did happen, that will raise alarm bells.
It's slowly changing, to be honest. But
It is. For the worse, yeah, I know.
So for example, they wouldn't be doing the cigarettes and stuff.
Yeah.
But with this device here on Snapchat and TikTok,
Yeah.
you could be socializing with a lot of other gangs and stuff. You see.
Yeah, so
I'm
there's
not,
that as well.
So
yeah.
I'm just saying, like, the modes for what you just mentioned have changed and they are becoming quite dangerous. But sorry, your point again, that's why I was smiling when you were speaking, right?
Yeah.
If people start to carve out in their minds a systemic thinking, they will be able to take every single issue and put it back to the core values of that society. So when you were speaking about social services and you were speaking about vulnerable families, astaghfirullah, let's just put a hypothetical argument here. I have a child with my wife. And then I am bewildered by some other pretty woman. I cheat on my wife. I say, look, I don't want that. It's too much hard labor. I'm going to go drive off into the sunset with this woman. Who can do anything to me?
It's true.
Okay, so no one can do nothing to me. But now let's look at the implications. I've left my wife with a child. This child, son or daughter, will grow up without a father figure. You need a father figure in life. That's how Allah has designed the family unit. You need a father to show you the ropes of life, to be your protector. Now I've left them and I have a daughter. She will cling on to any male attention she gets. But me running off into the sunset with a pretty woman, is it just one person in a million or does this happen all the time?
It's more common than just your hypothetical.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. It's normal. You go to schools and you hear from like your cousins and they have friends and they'll say, yeah, my friend, her mom has 2 boyfriends. It's normal, So I'm trying to say
that's actually mad. I had to compute that. My mom has 2 boyfriends.
It's
I don't usually swear, but
it's actually like it's normal. So what I'm trying to say is if you look at every single facet of life, the family unit, the economic situation, this grooming issue, crime, theft, looting, it's all because there's a base level culture and you could say a set of ideas here that cause this. That's what I'm trying. And I know what you're trying to say, that look, the viewers want a quick fix. I get all of that. I was of this thinking years ago. We've applied quick fix after quick fix after quick fix. The problem still remains. And it gets worse. It will get worse. But would you agree to say that this whole issue of rape and grooming gangs has only increased?
Yes.
But then what about the quick fixes? Do you see? So that's what I'm trying to say by that. What I'm trying to pass to the views here is if we start to have a mindset where we're focused on the root cause, and of course, it's not going to change overnight. It's not going to. Things don't change overnight. There needs to be graft. There needs to be thinking. People like ourselves, what we're doing, alhamdulillah, now, we've got platforms to give rise to these discussions. This is something that we need to be. Mashallah, you got 5 pillars. You got all the prolific dawah carriers in the world. In Britain especially, we have a stronghold on da'wah in the West. These are the discussions we need to be having. That Islam truly again. People have been groomed about what Islam is. It's a barbaric religion, chops your hand off, lashes you, stones you to death, and puts you in a niqab and puts you under the staircase. No. Again, we've actually been groomed first. We've been groomed. Islam is not like that.
Yep.
Islam is not like that. So I think the case needs to be made that the political elite, the government today, whenever they see a failure, they don't want to acknowledge it because it's not part of their belief system to acknowledge failure. Their belief system is, let us capitalize on the masses. Islam's political belief, even if you look at by the word mas'ul, the Prophet ﷺ says, أَلَا كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. All of you are shepherds, and each shepherd will be asked about his flock. The word mas'ul here means in Arabic the one who will be asked on the day of judgment. And that hadith later on goes on to say that the leader will be asked about his people, and the father will be asked about his home, and the woman about her children. There is, from Islam's belief system on a government level, the model of governance in Islam, its core thing is accountability to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you very much. Very, very, very powerful. And I think both I and the viewers have what we anticipated to get. We got much, much more.
I hope so.
Inshallah, may Allah reward you. May Allah keep you steadfast
Ameen.
in your pursuit of knowledge and helping to change people. And
Ameen.
admire you very much. And I think we had a very powerful conversation. I'm just going to turn to the viewers.
No problem.
And excuse me for the profanity.
No problem.
That was outlandish but very true these days. And again, apologies for the profanity. I think it was outlandish when someone says my mum has 2 boyfriends. But putting jokes to the side, I mean, I think it's more of a common theme now, along with other perverse things that are happening in society out there from before. So the topic today was Pakistani grooming gangs, in brackets rape. Is it a deep-rooted problem? This Imam here acknowledged it, and overwhelmingly and categorically, the deep-rooted problem is within society itself and the governance of it and the way it's governed and the penal codes associated with it. I did try my best to answer and put some quick fixes and plasters on just for deterrent purposes. And also we have to realize that we live in a society, a pluralistic society with people from all walks of life. And I think sometimes I'm of the opinion that quick fixes and deterrences are important. And ultimately, even though we live under the law of democracy and the judicial system takes precedence over everyone else or everything else, I do think we all do have a responsibility to govern our own flock. And what I mean by that is our own communities. If you see wrong, point it out. And I think the punishment should be according. Now, I'm not advocating any crimes or anything that's against the law, but whether it means it's stern words or ostracization or anything like that, it's just to let people know that we are from the people, trying to help the people, and we're all about community cohesiveness. I definitely wish that these perpetrators can be locked up for even longer than they have been. And also my condolences to those victims, those poor victims. And we hope, this is wishful thinking here, that we can prevent this and we can stop this from happening. But as the Imam very candidly and articulately said, the system needs to be changed. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and I hope we've benefited you. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bringing you the conversations that matter. Share, like, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.